Today's video is going to be on how to remove popcorn ceilings and leave a nice smooth ceiling. If you're unlucky enough to have one of these ceilings, which I consider to be one of the cheapest ceilings that there is, you can't paint it, because if you do you'll lock it in and destroy it. Your best bet is to remove it and give you a nice smooth ceiling. You can see I've had some water damage. I've already repaired the leak that was on the roof. I've also removed the fan that we had in here, and I'll be replacing that. I actually will be redoing the whole room. Having said that, let me show you the tools that you'll need to remove the ceiling. Plastic spatula, and the reason I like plastic is it has less of a tendency to gouge the sheetrock. Most of these ceilings that have popcorn on them were not finished. They were taped, and that's about it. Then the sheetrock, or excuse me, the popcorn was sprayed on over it. So you'll need several spatulas. You'll need a spray bottle. This is the bare minimum. It will do the job. Your fingers will thank you, however, if you get one of these. Because with this unit, you can pump it up and spray it. One thing you'll want to consider before you start a job like this is when your house was built. If it was built prior to the 90s, you might want to get it checked for asbestos. I'm not quite sure what date they stopped using asbestos for this, but it's always a safe bet. You can easily get it tested. I'll put a link into a test site. This house was built in '95, so I don't think it's an issue. You can scrape these dry. It's a tough process and leaves little ridges. So generally the best way to get these ceilings is to give it a good spray and let it soak for a little bit. Just a few more pumps. And I like starting off with a small area, about 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet. Just wetting it down. And you can see it makes a huge difference. You can start scraping right away. You may have to wet it down a couple of times. And one of the things you'll see is that there's no additional finish, there's no primer or anything that's put on these ceilings when these finishes are used. Give it a little bit of squirt. So one of the things that we're going to have to do after we finish scraping all this junk off is sand it lightly and finely. So although this is a tedious job, it is doable, and you can see it's not really affecting the joint compound underneath, though you do want to be careful not to go too deeply or apply too much water, because you can damage the sheetrock, and then you have to do more patching than necessary. You probably will have to do some, but not a whole lot. Here's a close-up view of an area that I already did. You can see the tape line, as well as some of the sheetrock screws that have been taped over. There's a little bit of residue left behind. That's going to sand off and leave a smooth surface. So I'm not really going crazy trying to tackle all the way down to the paper. As a matter of fact, there's more chance of doing damage if you do that. My main goal is to get most of that popcorn off, leave maybe a little bit behind, so that when I sand, it will leave a smooth surface ready to prime. One thing that I've found as I've been doing this is that working with a larger area actually is helpful. It gives the water a little bit more time to soak in. So now I'm doing about 1.5 feet by 3 feet roughly. I'm not measuring, but that's going to give it time to soak in, and it seems like 2 passes works, and also keep the beveled edge towards the ceiling seems to help as well. One thing I didn't mention earlier, but I will tell you now, is that having a drop cloth of some sort is very helpful in keeping the mess contained. This stuff will make a huge mess, and unfortunately, if you have work boots, it will also leave a nice trail behind you should you happen to not clean your boots. So I don't recommend using work boots. My wife's going to be really happy to see this when she gets home. She'll be thrilled that I started the room, but I'm sure she's going to be really pissed off about the footprints everywhere. So other than having a drop cloth to contain the mess as much as possible, you may want to use flat-soled shoes and put a nice little carpet in front of the room you're working on. You can wipe your feet. That will keep the wife or any other significant other happy. So we've gotten the popcorn off the ceiling. Now I'm going to go around and sand down the spots that look like they got a little bit of flaw in them, or if there's some of the sheetrock papers tore up. I'll be using this temporarily by hand with 100 grit sheetrock paper, and I will be using breathing and eye protection because this dust is insidious. Will get everywhere, including your lungs. Here's an example of what I'll be looking for in sanding down. You can see that spot there. That's a piece of sheetrock paper that's torn off. I'm just going to sand lightly over that, and just to take it down a bit so it won't leave a bump. Then I'll cover it with a little bit of joint compound. There's a few more right there. The other thing I'll be looking for is for little marks in the sheetrock, if we can find one right there. Now that I've got all those little holes sanded in, I'm just going to go over the whole ceiling lightly with a pole sander this time, so I'm not so close to it. So all the popcorn's off the ceiling. I've got it sanded. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in some patchwork. I'll be using compound. Of course, I buy a bucket of the pre-made stuff. I don't let it sit around for too long because if you do, it tends to get hard and clumps and little bits in there. Got a bucket of water to keep all the tools clean. And I'll be using a taping knife, a small scraper, and a hook. And basically the hook is just going to let me get a little bit of compound on there, smooth it out, get the air bubbles out, and then I can start patching. Now the compound comes out, I don't know if you can see that, but it's a bit, it's got little bubbles and stuff in it, so one of the things you can do with the hook is kind of smooth it out. And you're going to get crap all over the floor. It's fine. I'm going to replace this carpet anyway. This whole room's getting redone. And now we'll get up here and start. What I'm doing is looking for defects. Sometimes if you look at it at an angle, at a sharp angle, you'll see things that you wouldn't normally see if you're looking at it from a straight perspective. Alright, so I've got a bucket of Kills. I usually like using a PVA primer, but I thought I'd give this a shot. It's got good covering capabilities. It calls itself a primer, so hopefully it'll do what a primer's supposed to do. And really what you want with a primer is something that leaves a nice thick coat and the texture behind. It kind of hides the flaws. I've got the medium roller and a heavier one, which I may not use. I haven't decided yet. If there's any really bad spots, I may use this one to go over it and leave a heavier texture to cover up any defects. I've got a brush to cut in the corners and my favorite paint bucket, which lets me handle both the brush as well as the roller. Having said that, I will go ahead and start. I've got the primer finished and it's ready for the final coat. I'll give you a quick view of what the ceiling looks like now that the popcorn's been removed. It's been patched in, sanded, and coated primer. Here's a view of the ceiling. While the popcorn's been taken off, it's been patched in and sanded. You can see it's smooth. All it needs is a final coat, but I would call this done as far as removing the popcorn and getting the paint ready. So that's it for removing the popcorn and getting your ceiling paint ready. I hope this video has been educational for you and you enjoyed it. If not, I'm sorry, but if it is, I'm glad you stayed and watched it. Thank you.